Hi, my name is Del Wilbur. I'm the White House editor for the LA Times in Washington. Joining me today is David Savage, our Supreme Court writer, to talk about the political bombshell of the day. Justice Stephen G. Breyer, the 83-year-old liberal pragmatist, announced today he was stepping down from the High Court, throwing the entire city into kind of tumult about what will happen next in the Senate. Who will Biden nominate? And I'd like to start off with you, Dave. Who is Justice Breyer, and what's his legacy? What did he leave a legacy?
Well, I described him as a sort of liberal pragmatist. He's sort of a throwback to an earlier era. He actually worked in the Senate as an aide to Ted Kennedy. He was a Harvard law professor, smart guy, and a sort of guy who believes in government. It seemed very old-fashioned. He believes in government. He believes in federal regulation. He thinks government's a force for good. He's now in a court where there are 6 conservatives who are skeptical of the government, skeptical of government regulations. And he seems increasingly sort of from a different era. Breyer loved the time when Sandra O'Connor and Kennedy and some of the moderate conservatives were on the court, because he'd always thought, if I could work with the moderates, we could come up with some reasonable decisions that sort of make sense, that are not too extreme. But boy, that's a different time. He's now by the time he's leaving now, there are 6 very conservative justices, and there's not a lot of room for like working together. In effect, just the way the House and Senate have changed. When he was in the Senate used to have moderates in the middle who could work out deals. The Supreme Court used to be like that too. It's not like that anymore. And he's now retiring at 83 and clearing the way for President Biden to make his first choice. And I think you know this, Del, we wrote about it a year or so ago. Biden said on the campaign trail that he's going to choose the first Black woman for the Supreme Court. So this has a potential to be a very historic change. And we will know in the spring. I take it President Biden will wait a little bit of a time to pick a new nominee. But the Democrats now have a chance to fill the Breyer seat with a prominent Black woman jurist.
And when do you think we'll have these confirmation hearings, and who are the 2 top candidates? I believe there are 2 top candidates on their mind, one of whom's from California.
Yes, the 2 top candidates are Ketanji Brown Jackson, who was a district judge in Washington. She's now on the Court of Appeals. Breyer elevated her to the Court of Appeals to take the seat that Merrick Garland had left to become Attorney General. She's probably the front runner. The other is Leondra Kruger, who's has served in Washington as a government lawyer, but is now on the California Supreme Court. I thought she would have been a really good pick. I think she'd still be a very good pick. But people tell me that the administration asked her to come back and be the Solicitor General, the person who argues before the court. And she basically said no, that she wanted to stay on the California Supreme Court. And I've talked to some people at the White House who think that her chances are now dimmed because she didn't take the job in the administration. But those are the 2 frontrunners, Ketanji Brown Jackson and Leondra Kruger.
And doesn't Brown Jackson have an advantage, because she just went through a confirmation hearing for a very prestigious appeals court, didn't she?
Absolutely right, Del. I mean, I think we know, if you've been around Washington for a while, the DC Circuit is the sort of launching pad for Supreme Court justices for 30 or 40 years. And so, yes, she went through it. She was a district judge. She's now on the Court of Appeals. That's a classic place where Supreme Court nominees come from. So, yes, I would say she's got a pretty good edge.
When we think back about Breyer, do you think he was getting frustrated at the 6, there's 6 conservatives on the court, 3 liberal justices, which he has one. Like you were talking about, he was this consensus builder. He tried. Do you think he was just getting frustrated of losing all the time and this was it? Or do you think he just realized, I'm 83 years old, and if they lose the Senate, if the Democrats lose the Senate in November, I might have to serve on this court for 6 more years if a Republican wins?
I think both are true. He knew that he needed to leave now. Ruth Ginsburg was widely criticized in recent times for having, she stayed beyond the time when Obama was president, there was a thought that she might step down and the Democrats would have filled her seat. She didn't. She didn't anticipate Trump's election, and he ended up replacing her because she died just before the. So Breyer was not going to stay too long. The Democrats could lose control of the Senate. So this was the year he had to go. But in answer to your first question, yes, I think he was. He sounded increasingly frustrated. The argument a couple of weeks ago on the vaccine mandate, he said several times, it would be unbelievable. I just can't believe that we would strike down a rule for vaccines and testing in the middle of a pandemic. But of course, that's exactly what the court did. It was a 6-3 vote. He knew what was going to happen. He sounded very irritated, very frustrated, almost, I can't believe we're doing this. And so, yes, I do think he'd come to the point where he's in some sense ready to leave the court.
Pull that parachute. When you look back, you've been covering the court for a long time. You were covering the court before he got on the court.
That's true.
What's his lasting legacy? Is there a case or is there something he did that you think will stand out for historians 100 years from now?
Well, it's not a big legacy. You know, he was never a dominant figure in the court. The dominant figures were the prominent conservatives, William Rehnquist and Antonin Scalia, and Sandra O'Connor and the sort of moderates. And then on the left, it was Ruth Ginsburg. He was always overshadowed by somebody like Ruth Ginsburg or Sonia Sotomayor on the left. But I think for people who pay close attention to it, I do think his legacy is this sort of liberal pragmatism that in his view, when Congress passes a law, our job as the court to sort of give meaning to that law, to the purpose of the law, not to sort of fly-spec it and say, oh, did they really want this type of clean air regulation? He was the kind of guy who believed that we ought to make government work, and part of our job is enforcing the laws in line with Congress the way they passed them. So it was a sort of old-fashioned, as I say, liberal pragmatism, and I think that's his record, goes across a lot of cases, but he will not be remembered as somebody who changed the law or changed the court's precedent in some big fundamental way. That wasn't his approach.
David Savage, as always, thank you for your insights for our readers and our viewers. Much appreciated.
Thanks, Del. Good to talk with you.